What would you do if you came face to face with the most powerful man in the ancient world, knowing you had just killed one of his officers? Most people would beg for mercy. Most would fall to their knees. But this woman stood tall, looked Alexander the Great directly in the eyes, and told him exactly why she had no regrets about what she'd done. What happened next would reveal something about power, justice, and human dignity that still resonates 2,000 years later. The year was 335 BC, and Alexander's army had just swept through the ancient Greek city of Thebes like a tsunami of bronze and blood. When a city fell to conquest in those days, the aftermath was often horrific. Soldiers would rampage through homes, taking whatever they wanted, doing whatever they pleased. The rules of civilization would temporarily vanish, replaced by the raw chaos of military victory. In one of those homes lived a woman named Timoclea, a member of Thebes' nobility. She had wealth, status, and a family name that commanded respect throughout the city. But on that terrible day, none of that would protect her from what was about to happen. What makes her story extraordinary isn't just what was done to her, but what she did in response, and how that response would eventually reach the ears of Alexander himself. One of Alexander's captains, a man whose name history has mercifully forgotten, broke into Timoclea's home during the chaos. What happened next was an act of violence that happened far too often in the ancient world, a world where women had few protections and even fewer avenues for justice. He violated her in her own home, in the place where she should have been safest. But this captain wasn't satisfied with that crime alone. Like so many conquerors, he was driven by greed as much as by brutality. He knew that noble families often hid their valuables during times of war, and he wanted to know where Timoclea's family treasure was hidden. Here's where the story takes its first turn. Most people in her situation would have refused to answer, or perhaps lied and sent him on a wild chase through the city. But Timoclea did something completely unexpected. She answered him calmly, almost cooperatively. She told him the treasure was hidden in a well in her garden. Can you imagine the composure that must have taken? To speak steadily, to sound believable, to control every tremor in your voice while your mind races ahead to what comes next. The captain, convinced he was about to claim even more spoils from his conquest, followed her outside to the garden well. As he leaned over the edge of the well, peering down into the darkness below to spot the glimmer of gold or silver, Timoclea made her move. She pushed him. Not a gentle shove, but a decisive, forceful push that sent him tumbling into the depths. But she didn't stop there. She knew that a fall alone might not finish what she had started. So she began gathering stones, heavy rocks from around her garden, and she dropped them into the well, one after another. Each stone was an act of judgment, each one a declaration that she would not let this crime go unpunished, that she would not let this man walk away to potentially do the same thing to another woman in another house. Think about the strength this required, not just physical strength, though that was considerable, but the strength of will to follow through. To not hesitate, to not second guess, to not be paralyzed by fear of the consequences, because she had to know what was coming next. In that world, killing one of Alexander's officers was essentially a death sentence. His fellow soldiers would find out. They would come for her, and they would demand retribution. Yet she did it anyway, because in that moment, her sense of justice outweighed her instinct for survival. And come for her, they did. Timoclea was arrested and brought before Alexander himself. Picture that scene for a moment. Alexander the Great, the man who had conquered most of the known world before his 30th birthday, the military genius who had never lost a battle, sitting in judgment. And standing before him, a woman who had just killed one of his officers. She had every reason to expect execution. In fact, the soldiers who brought her probably assumed they were simply delivering her to her death. But something remarkable happened when Alexander heard her story. When she explained what his captain had done to her, when she described how she had taken justice into her own hands because no other justice was available to her, when she stood before him with quiet dignity rather than groveling fear, Alexander made a decision that surprised everyone present. He didn't order her execution. He didn't have her thrown into chains. Instead, he was moved by her courage and her dignity. He recognized that his officer had committed an unforgivable crime, and that Timoclea's response, while extreme, was understandable given the circumstances. Alexander ordered Timoclea freed, along with her children. More than that, he gave explicit orders that she and her family were to be protected, that no harm should come to them. It was an acknowledgement that even in the brutal world of ancient conquest, there were lines that shouldn't be crossed, and that when those lines were crossed, the response might be equally severe. Timoclea's story survives because it reveals something powerful about human dignity, about the moment when someone decides that justice matters more than survival, and about how even absolute power can recognize and respect moral courage when it's confronted with it face to face. She couldn't change what had happened to her, but she made absolutely certain that the man who did it would never do it to anyone else.